There's this whole news cycle that's happening right now that's basically saying that vibe coding is a bubble, the MRR isn't real. And I have to be honest with you, up until today, I kind of bought into this narrative. But today I'm having on my friend Jacob Klug, who runs an agency specializing in lovable MVP development. These guys are super overpowered. They're building like full platform level applications in the span of like 2-week sprints. And he's arguing that all these people that are saying this is a bubble is actually a skill issue. And he explains in this episode the specific formula that they use to create beautiful software that's extremely functional, that has high complexity using these no-code tools. If you're new here, I'm Cody Schneider. I've been building online companies for the last 15 years. Go subscribe to this channel right now if you're on YouTube, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's how we keep the lights on. It's the easiest way that you can open a conversation with somebody that you're trying to get into a dialogue with. And today's episode is brought to you by Graft.com. Graft.com is my company. It's an AI data analyst software that allows for you to build live, custom dashboards that are interactive, and there's zero learning curve to get started. You can create these dashboards in minutes. Just connect any of your data sources, whether that's Google Analytics 4, Facebook ads, HubSpot, Google Ads, Search Console, Amplitude, and then you can just chat with the application to build a dashboard. You can say, build me a stack bar chart showing new users versus all users over time, and it will make that chart from your Google Analytics data source without you having to learn how to use the software whatsoever. You don't have to spend hours learning Looker Studio or Tableau. You can just jump right into this. And we also function as a data transfer and data storage company along with the business intelligence component. And for the more technical people out there, we're an ETL and a data warehouse and the business intelligence tool. We're helping founders, e-commerce companies, marketing agencies, marketing teams, HR departments, and recently financed through data analytics about whatever their source data is. And today I'm giving you a 14-day free trial that comes with 10 seats for your team. Just go to graph.com by using the link below and sign up for free for that trial. All right, let's get started with today's show. Jacob, dude, so stoked to have you on, man. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Of course, man. Of course. So I feel like you are probably see just like a ton of these apps being built using these no-code tools. Like Lovable is what you guys have deep expertise on. I'm just curious to download, like, how are these most effectively used? Like, when should they be used and when shouldn't they be? Like, from my experience, if I'm trying to build a full-fledged platform with like multiple features from a scope perspective, it's it's not really the right way to do that. But if I need like, a personal tool for myself, or like one, almost like a tool that has one killer feature that I launch with, it seems like those are the kind of the best ways to go about it. But I'm just curious to see like what you guys see with the clients that you're working with, and like how can, the people that are listening use these tools most effectively, and like what should be their frame of mind be when they're coming into them?
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I think a lot of people view these tools as kind of like these vibe coding kind of got a bad rep when it first started. It was kind of viewed as like this like very, janky, amateur way of building software. And I think that's true for any new technologies coming from like the no code bubble days of things. We had the same kind of trend where early days in no code, you saw like really janky products being built. And then as the technology got better, as the people and kind of just more people like educated themselves and became familiar with best practices, the tools and the products that would come out of them just got a lot better. So I think we're probably going to see a similar thing. I actually don't think it's necessarily a like a tool issue. I don't think it's like Lovable isn't to the point where you're able to build these products. I think it's just a skill issue. And I think that what you have right now is a lot of people that are not devs trying to be devs. Now, Lovable has, and all these AI vibe coding tools, Repli, etc., have made the bar significantly lower, right? I mean, like if no code brought it to like 50%, we're now at like 85%. You don't of like taking the whole process. There's still that 10%, where like maybe when you're thinking about enterprise or thinking about more sophisticated applications, where you kind of do need a little bit of technical experience of like just kind of getting it over the hump. I'm sure we all are familiar of like, that error loop, right? So I think that we technically have the capabilities to build pretty much everything. It's just a matter of, of your individual skills.
Totally. So, I mean, I find this really to be the most impactful thing with all of this is like come in with the plan, have a PRD that you've built, right? And then understand, basically like the language that's necessary to describe the thing before you even start the build process. Um, I'm curious, like, what does your guys' stack look like to actually get these out the door? So, say, like, for example, you're going to go and build, an internal tool or an MVP for a client. How are you scoping that? Like, what does that look like? And then are you pulling it out of Lovable into like a Cursor or Claude Code or something else to kind of do like the final back end setup, et cetera? Or are you doing this entirely on top of this platform?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say, a lot of the planning does start within like a chat GPT or just any AI tool. I think it's really important that you really think through the product you're trying to build. I think, it's kind of like the expression of like when you have infinite choice and infinite like kind of ways to build, you can kind of get really scatterbrained. And so that's one of the things that we really make sure is that we clearly define what we're building first. And ChatGPT does a really good job of just kind of like prompting you and asking you questions to kind of help build that PRD. Once you have that, it makes it a lot easier to kind of go into Lovable and build your first prompt. Usually, you can kind of can still down to something a little bit more, shorter. And and yeah, we build, I would say it depends on the application. We try to keep it in Lovable as much as possible because Lovable does have like such great infrastructure behind it. Now they just came out with Lovable Cloud. I'm not sure if you saw that yesterday.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, which means that everything is now on Lovable. So you don't even need to leave Lovable to do hosting or database or anything, or analytics even. So, you know, with that infrastructure, if you can utilize it more, you just get more of the benefits of it. We do occasionally have to move it over to Cursor though, to maybe debug something or add in some integration that's just being a pain.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, like, what are people building? Like, if for the marketers that are listening to this, like, are there any any things that have you come across your desk where you're like, oh, this is fascinating. This is the way that people should be doing this. A lot of what I've seen has been like, here's a personal workflow. I go and I build personal software for myself, but I'm just curious to kind of understand like how, like, even if it's your own side projects or stuff that you've seen, like, how can people like just to give people a point of relativity of like what they can do with this and like how they should be, how they can use this to automate their day-to-day processes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's been like a huge difference in like the type of products for being built, but I do think that there is becoming a trend of kind of what you said, like these like people almost building their own products over using an existing SaaS. I think we just ran a cohort of 20 people that are all kind of building their own product, and almost all of them are going after their own kind of problem set. And a lot of them are, maybe have been paying for an existing solution, but one, they kind of want the skills that come with building on Lovable. And then they also just want like to be able to have their own tool. And so what I think what we're probably going to see is this idea of like a personal OS, a personal like operating system, right? Where people build maybe individual tools or maybe like one big tool where they manage their entire life through it, right? And it's like a series of different applications. I think it's going to be really interesting, and potentially, I'm not sure. I'm not going to make a prediction, but it could start to rival traditional SaaS in the sense that, like, if somebody just wants to build the same thing in a weekend, there's also that like feeling of pride of like, oh, I own this, right? And so there's almost like a little bit of a ego to it as well.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting to I have a friend who's been just going down his like P&L of his agency and like looking at their biggest costs and being like, okay, engineering team, like go and basically build our version of this, right? To like cut the costs so that they
Yeah,
can increase margin. And it's cheaper for them to do that and have, two offshore devs that they have full time working for them rather than like, using these tools or using the software that they're using. And so it's kind of this build versus buy is suddenly becoming like way more. I mean,
yeah,
you're seeing this too in like these like very traditional categories, like DocuSign as an example, where it's like you can build basically a document signing application in like a couple of hours now, right?
literally,
Which could
yeah.
replace, whatever the cost is if you have a team of 100 people all using the DocuSign software. But I I'm curious, like for you, like with you know, I imagine like you have your client work, but you're also just building stuff for yourself. Like, what are the things that you've like done recently on like your personal builds where you're like, oh, I didn't like. It just kind of like shocked you that you were capable of doing it. I guess like using these no code tools, or is there anything that you've
Yeah.
built that's kind of been like, I guess fascinating, or like shocking in a way?
Yeah, I think one of them, I just posted a YouTube video of it. Maybe we can link it. I just built I think one of the just the most interesting industries that I really am optimistic for AI is healthcare. And I think one of the lowest I guess, friction things when it comes to someone's healthcare is taking preventative measures, whether that's supplementing or, lifestyle things. And I think the best way, it's so interesting that like, we may cut this, maybe off topic, but I think it's so interesting how we measure every single thing about everything, about business, about, the weather, like everything is measured except for, we don't take the time to measure our own bodies really. I mean, now it's starting to become more of a trend, but this idea of like only doing blood work when you're sick is kind of like it's not very preventative, right? And so I built this tool that essentially um, takes PDF, like if you upload a PDF of your blood work, and then it uses OpenAI to analyze it, and it will basically track your blood over time. And so, if you upload it in January, and then it will keep giving you charts, and it will give you suggestions on how to improve certain things. And I think that it's just like it sounds stupid to maybe some people, and people may think this I'm like overstepping, but you really should know like some of the basic foundations of your blood work. Like if someone's like, what's your glucose sugars or whatever, like you should be able to be like, oh, like this is kind of the range I've fallen. I don't think that's a crazy thing, and to have goals to like improve those things. These are very manageable things. I mean, a lot of this comes down to like an extra pill that you take a day. And
Totally.
so I think that's like a really low friction way of like simple tool that I just built for myself. I'm not going to release it because I'm sure there's a lot of compliance stuff with it, but
Totally.
yeah.
I think that this is interesting though, this idea of like, almost like I have another friend who built like a personal CRM, right? Where
Mhm.
he views it as like, I'm pulling in all of my WhatsApp data, my Telegram data, all of my, contact data, all of my iMessage data, all my email data, just so like I can have kind of like a holistic view of like everybody that he works in he's like a talent manager, right? And so it's
Sure.
just like talking to everybody everywhere is kind of the problem that he's facing. And it's really interesting to see these solutions like the one that you described where it's like here's this personal thing that I'm having trouble with, right? Like how do I go, how do I go and solve this? I'm curious, like, so you find this problem for yourself. What's your first step on kind of building that out? Like again, for the audience that's like, I want to build, custom software solutions for whatever it is that I'm working on. Like one I built recently for myself was like basically it does a, research on all of our every person that basically schedules a demo and then gives me like a synopsis right before the meeting. And it's just like literally an audio 30 seconds that tells me what I should know about them before going into the call, right? And I just listen to it right before I jump into the sales call. But I like, if you wanted to start out building, this, for whatever problem you're facing, like where should they begin with this? And like, should they just go straight into building the feature? Should they think about like, doing the auth first and also like kind of building out the database and then starting the features? Or like, is there any tactical like sequence of events that they should focus on to actually build these applications for themselves?
Yeah. So I think first thing is again just having a real kind of PRD or some kind of like scope on paper is just really helpful. It gives you an idea of like what the end goal is. It also gives the AI context on really what you're trying to build. Um, as far as order, we played around with different kind of orders. I would say it's still like very experimental as far as like the right one, but I would say overall, what we've seen is that building kind of the infrastructure and the base functionality and some of the biggest kind of hurdles first is usually a good thing to do because you get some of the foundation out of the way. And so things like auth, things like your database setup. Now with Lovable Cloud, I mean, it just makes it so much more seamless. So like you're not even needing to really think about it. You just basically say, hey, just like connect the front end with the back end now, and it will just do it. So
It's a great
even
idea.
that is starting to like to decimate. But I would also take it like one thing at a time. I find that in general, a good rule of thumb for AI, and this goes for ChatGPT, this goes for Claude, this goes for everything. I'm curious your experience in this too, is I actually feel that there's a pretty clear correlation to the longer the prompt, the longer the context you give it, the worse it does.
Yeah, I find
That's
that
my
breaking it up is like the only way to make it work and like give
yeah.
it like breathing room in between. Like prompt chaining is the most effective way to do everything right.
Oh,
If you're writing content, that's the best way to do it. If you're, trying to create AI videos or, avatar videos, like that's the best way to like it just whatever it is, breaking it into those components and having it like work through each of those is what
exactly.
I find like getting it to one shot things is
It's
way
hard.
less likely from an a positive outcome standpoint. So
Yeah, I think you gotta let the AI, like you gotta give it some room to kinda breathe a little bit. It's kind of the same way you would talk to a human, right? It's like, would you give someone that works for you, like, the most rigorous, like, "Do this, don't do that." Like, at a certain point, it's gonna feel like a robot, right? And I know AI is a robot, but in fact, if you treat it more like a human, I think it will act more as a human. And so I think that's kind of true across the board. It's true, yeah, as you said, for content writing. Like, if I were to try to write a Twitter post with AI and give it, like, a long thing, it will do way worse than if I just am like, "Improve this," and then I give it, like, some sample, and it will do it really well.
totally. Yeah, I think examples, providing that is the biggest thing that finding to be the unlocks is giving it data of examples of high performers, right? So, say for example, like we own a bunch of email newsletters, like that's one of the businesses we have in the portfolio. And, if I just say like write a good subject line,
Yeah.
right? Like about this, whatever the topic is, that it's like, going to be a pretty terrible outcome. But in
Mm,
contrast, I'm like, hey, here's 10 subject lines that got, our best open rates. Like write a subject line for this content based off of the one that's provided, right?
yeah,
And the
yeah,
outcomes that you're going to get is just like way higher quality. And I think that, and it's in its own like right there is an example of like, oh, that's an automation or that's a software that you can basically build. Like imagine you're plugged into whatever your email service provider is, you're constantly downloading, the campaigns that you're running with the subject lines, analyzing that data, and then basically like, building it so that it's for any new email that you're sending, like you could have it just like, one shot basically write that based off of the data that's live, streaming in the background. And like
yeah,
these are how I'm seeing these tools being used like more and more is like what are these internal workflows I'm doing? How do I go and basically, build out almost my own operating system for how I approach whatever it is that I'm going about. So I'm really curious, like what I, again, I know you guys see a ton of products. What have you seen be successful, and like what has not been successful? Like based on this stuff, like is there categories that are you're kind of getting like more, more success in? Is there specific like product scope? Like oh, I have one. This has one features, or it's a full platform. I'm just curious if there's like any kind of high level insight that you have just based off of like the amount of products that you guys like push through the agency.
yeah. I mean, majority of the stuff that we do are like full blown, like startup products, right? So think like solo founder or early stage team is looking to build essentially their entire platform with us. Now, I honestly like the thing is, I don't think that like AI has fundamentally changed. I mean, obviously we've seen more maybe like AI kind of products, but that's more like like just playing into the whole AI thing. I think one thing that I have noticed is that the ideas are getting worse. As in, like, I think that the barrier to entry is so easy now that that is one of the things that you need to be cautious of when you're building with AI is that it's almost so easy that there's almost no like downside. But like obviously, if you're doing that every weekend for a year straight, you're not going to also see much upside. So, I think it's more about picking the right ideas and still going through. I think that like thoughtful process, especially if you're going to work with like an agency, to build something. Um, we're definitely seeing some more internal stuff, and I've been surprised to see what kind of enterprises are starting to utilize it. I can't really say names, but I think really big companies are starting to realize how powerful this is, especially when you equip them with the existing team. I think that, you give this to a designer to kind of whip up a prototype or something, and you just get a much better result than what you used to be able to get with, Figma and et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I'm realizing with a lot of this too is like the domain expertise is still the most valuable aspect of this, right? Like it's just a tool within the tool belt of a person that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
It does make the barriers to entry lower for an entry level person or first time builder, etc.
Yeah.
But the real kind of there's like a power law with this, right? Where it's like if you again, you really know what you're doing and you can deploy these tools, like you can do so much more than, was previously. I see this with like AI automation in particular for like marketing. Like if you know how to do marketing and
Yeah.
then understand how to do AI automation, like you basically just like turn yourself, from like one person into 100 people, right? From like the content like output that you can basically produce and just like the level of just like, distribution that you can create. I think that same thing is happening where it's like, oh, if you're a designer or a product person or just like somebody that's running operations internally, you have this very specific problem that you're facing. You can go and build this software for yourself that basically solves that solution. For the people that are trying to learn, okay, I want to use this. I need to use this. I know that this is important for like my career. I mean, I just saw McKinsey laid off like 11,000 people or something
Wow.
insane that like can't adopt AI. That's basically what they said is the reason that they're like sunsetting them. um how would you like tell that person to like go and learn this? Like is there like courses, is there YouTube channels, like who's doing the best content around this, or is it just like just start building with it and put an hour aside a day and build something every day, and that's actually how you're going to get you know the most effective with it? What would you say to those people that are trying to figure that out?
Yeah, I think building is definitely probably the best bet. I think that you learn as you go. I would say try to understand some of the base principles of what goes into building. So understand what the difference is of front end and the back end. Understand, maybe basic security measures, what role level security is, how to utilize Lovable's like security features. I would say Lovable has great docs and kind of like community as well around all this stuff. So like it's really well documented. I believe if you go to like docs.lovable.dev or something like that, I'm sure we can, yeah. They have really great guides on how to get started, features, etc. People like myself, people like, Riley Brown or some other big creators, I'm sure you've done some as well, Greg Eisenberg, are kind of always
Dude,
showing
I'm
like
not even close to you guys in this category. I
okay,
do nothing in this
okay,
space,
okay,
right?
okay.
So
Well, you associate yourself well with the people that do.
no.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any like one thing that I've noticed from kind of helping people, less on the agency side, more on the cohort side, is how the the availability to it almost freaks people out. As in, like, people know that they can do anything, and it's like this like huge like new opportunity to build things, and they just do nothing because they become so overwhelmed. Like it was just so surprising to me. We're doing like this like 4 week boot camp where we help founders, and week one I was like, so what percentage of you guys, this is they paid good money for this, and I was like, what percentage of you guys have built something with Lovable? And I'm expecting everyone to be like, yeah, of course, like we've tried a lot. I would say 50% are people like, no, not a
It's
single
insane.
prompt. And I was like, wow. And so I feel like, this is kind of why agencies still exist. I get a lot of hate for people like ripping on me for running a level agency, which I get the, I get the criticism, but you also have to understand that any new technology, first off, there are things you can do to obviously become better at it. The AI is not going to replace agencies. It's probably going to make them better, and more in demand because, at the end of the day, people are lazy and they want things done for them, and they want the insurance and the comfort that comes with working with experts. But anyways, long story short, I was just so surprised by how few people just built something. So as much as it is like, you don't want to waste your time like prompting away at different ideas. Having one or two side projects you just work on for just the sake of just keeping up to date on what's new, I think is super beneficial.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny. I've been finding myself just like keeping the windows open and like bouncing back and forth between like stuff I'm working on and then letting the agent work on something that I'm asking it like in the applicant. It's kind of a, I mean, it's really, it's a crazy world to be in. What I've been trying to do is like, whatever it is I'm working on currently, how can I automate that with software or like some type of AI automation? So like while I'm doing it and like in a, basically in a waiting period, say for example, I'm like cleaning an email list, I'm like over in the side, like trying to figure out, okay, can I just automate the entire process or the thing that I'm doing and then hand that off to myself, or that's just like handled by software. So
Yeah.
I want to circle back around to like the products that you're seeing this work. I talked to this kid, it would have been a couple weeks ago, and he basically built, it was like a tool in this random category that was pulling like public like weather data, right? And then providing it to like an industry that he was in. I just don't want
Sure.
to kind of blow up his spot, but I thought it really was fascinating, like the industry expertise and then the ability to like build that custom thing. It feels like that is what's happening right now, where it's like, oh, you used to have to build software for these huge industry categories because that was the only way that you could make this work from like a financial standpoint. But like now it's like, oh, I can find like this very niche industry with this very specific problem and kind of build that solution. Have you seen anything like that from the companies that you've worked with or the products that you guys have built, and like any insight there?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We've seen some big, I mean, even in the bubble days, the thing about everything going on with Lovable and AI is that for me, it's a completely history repeating itself. Maybe this is bigger than, no code and stuff, so more people are talking about it. But like all this stuff is literally like going exactly the same, in the
That's
exact
so funny.
sequence.
You're
Uh,
just watching the same cycle happen.
literally, I mean, I would say the cycle that we're in right now is kind of like we're definitely still early. I think a good way to gauge how early we are is the quality of the products that are being built with the tools and the design of them, right? Once you start seeing like really well polished design, like lovable apps, and that's really what we're trying to like. I think that's probably the hardest part of like really becoming good at vibe coding is that vibe coding is great at doing kind of the heavy lifting and the kind of it helps you generalize what you're trying to go for. But the second you want to be like really specific and like you know exactly what you want, but you just need it to work or look a certain way, that's where it becomes a bit trickier. And so that's why you have like developers like us where we can come and kind of just do that. But but yeah, to answer the question around creators, even we've been working with creators for a while. I think it's probably the biggest like kind of collab of like, content creators meet software. Now, especially it's more powerful because, these creators can get kind of full ownership of the products. They're no longer needing to raise money because the cost has just gone so significantly down. I do think though we are probably like kind of again what happened with Bubble and no code is like I think the pendulum will swing to a point where like every creator is creating software. Same with like I think every person is going to try to automate every single aspect of their business and life. And I think eventually we will reach a point of like, okay, this is like too much. Like people will be sick of uh thinking about automations. And I think people will revert back to like kind of OG way of doing it, and then again it'll swing back. It's always is, but I think we still have like a good year of like year or two of people building different softwares, whether for themselves, whether it's a creator kind of collab, XYZ.
No, it's super interesting. On the creator side, I have a friend that's doing something similar, and they basically like find a creator and then they pitch them on, here's the software that we think your audience could find valuable, or like partner with them, or like, hey, what is the
Yeah.
biggest pain that your audience has? Like, can we, basically build the software? How do you structure? Just to learn from you, like, how do you structuring those relationships? You guys doing a rev share setup? Is it a more of a like you just basically build the product, hand it off to them, and then maintain it for them, or what does that look like, or is it different on
Yeah.
each of the deals?
Yeah, we've done some like equity stuff in the past. I would say I try to stay away from them now. I think that it's a very different business. If you want to go into that business, I think go for it. But it's one that relies on it's a long-term business, right? It's like you're running like a private equity fund essentially, right? You're betting on
Totally.
the 3 to 5 years rather than the next 3 to 6 months. And so
It
for an
looks
agent
really good on paper, and in practice, it's always like very way, 100x harder than actually what you think it's going to be. So
exactly, yeah. So, um we just kind of try to keep it simple now, and we just do like kind of engagements where we work with them on a retainer basis or something like that. Find it's a win-win, and here's the thing. Like, I think going back to what I was saying, like you're gonna have some creators. It's the same with anything, right? Like it's like Prime, like Logan Paul and KSI's drink. It was like the epitome of like a creator brand, right? Like I think one of the most well executed probably plays, but you have like hundreds of other brands that were started by them and others that you've just never heard of again. And so it's going to be the same with software. The barrier to entry is going to be so easy that you're going to see all these creators spinning up software. And I think like execution is going to matter a lot.
totally, yeah. I think it's that kind of the dots I'm connecting with on this is like what we're seeing universally with everything in AI. Like there's the level of slop that is coming out through the pipeline is just so much
Yeah.
larger, right? Like whether it's short form video or even, I just saw it. I just got shown a media company that's basically doing like YouTube content that's like no, basically like no whatever it's called, like no face, or where they it's not an actual person, it's just a voiceover, right, with like edits in the background. But
Yeah.
they're basically dropping like it's something insane. I want to say it's like 1,000 videos a week, right? Across all of these different channels. And I think that is like what we're seeing, kind of universally, like in any of these industries. So it's really interesting though, because like at the end of the day, like those products can work. It's kind of what you've been saying. Like good product is good product, and like that, it doesn't really matter how it's built. It's like matters what the end thing
Yeah.
is. And I think that's
Yeah.
the same thing in media and content. Like people get really hung up for some reason on like, for example, AI avatars is one I hear like often. Like we see this in like with Facebook ads in particular, right? Like they work really well for SaaS. We
Yeah.
just usually see content works really well. People get hung up on the idea though of using them because they're like, oh, there's not trust built in or whatever. And it's like it doesn't even matter. It just works, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like whatever makes the impact is the thing that you should be doing. So anyway, it's just kind of interesting and fascinating to see that's happening, kind of
Yeah.
in your world and in comparison to like the stuff that we're experimenting with. But
Yeah. No, definitely. It's all the same. It's all the same stuff, just different industries.
totally. So talk to me about how to make an application, like from a design perspective, look like good.
Yeah.
I
It's good.
I like in the past personally, what I've done is like to basically take like a library, something like Radix or whatever, and say, okay, we're gonna use all the icons from that, use these components that they provide, etc. Is there other ways that you guys are doing it to make it feel like not like it's a vibe coded site? Like what is that? What are those tactical things you're doing?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we've started to do is we build our own components library for each project. That's one of the
Mm.
first things we actually do. So we'll build a page, call it slash components or whatever, and we will first start. Usually, let's say we have a Figma or something. We'll usually upload the Figma and just as like literally just screenshots or exporting them. Or if they don't have a Figma, we have our base components library that we can use, or just look for inspiration. And we'll literally just go and like craft every button, every, component that's required in the app. And we'll also have it print out the code and reference like the component ID so that we can reference it later. So it's like, oh, we want to change this
Mm.
exact button. Like it's not changed. It knows what to reference, right? And so by the
Almost
end of it,
serializing or giving a skew to everything. That's
yeah,
crazy.
exactly, yeah. So we're serializing, and then we go and we build and we tell it, hey, only use this components library, and hopefully it does. Now, obviously, it's not perfect. I would say definitely alleviates a lot more than without doing it. But yeah, you end up with like a much more robust process for design. I think the biggest thing though, honestly, is AI is just really good at taking the screenshots or images that you give it, and if you just say like copy this, it does a surprisingly good job. Going back to the whole like less is more kind of thing, I find that when I write up some like detailed prompt, let's say I have a video where I rebuilt Airbnb, just the front end, just to show how easy and close you could get it. And within 15 minutes, I tried out 3 different methods. So I tried out, the first one was, like, just giving it a screenshot. Just giving it a screenshot and say, "Copy this," nothing else, okay? The second one was, giving it to ChatGPT and, giving the image to ChatGPT and giving ChatGPT to give me a prompt to then give to Lovable. And then I did one where I tried both at the same time. And the one that performed the best by far was the first one, just the image. Which is super
It's
interesting,
crazy. It's so
'cause
funny you
you would
say that. I literally did this morning where we
yeah,
have a partner that we're working with, and he's like, "Hey, can you give me a landing page so that when I send them from the email newsletter to the site, like it lands on a co-branded landing page that it doesn't feel like a massive jump." I was like, "Yeah, do you have an example of one that you did previously?" He sent me the example. We took a screenshot of what that looked like, and then basically just like dropped it into our yeah, I built it
yeah,
in Cursor, right, and then had it deployed to a branch for Eng the that like minutes later, right? And I again, like you can spend hours trying to describe this, but it's really that visual is like the most effective way. Are you using that? So you're doing the components piece. Are you using that for the kind of the design as well? Like, are you saying, okay, here's this example, use the
yeah.
components library, design it like this, based off this wireframe, or what does that look like?
For, like, you're saying, like, the more the UX aspects, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
more the UX and like, how are you actually doing the build out of this? Or you
Yeah. I would
what
say
does that
that
flow
that
look like?
that I would say is probably more human-led, just maybe, just kind of our developers, our designers having a little bit more say, or in our cases, the client tends to have a bit more of a say. I think that's a little bit more intuitive, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to, like it's hard for AI. I mean, AI, like, Lovable will do it, but, like, is it gonna be the most optimal thing ever? Probably not, and so, I think that just honestly just comes from, like, repetition of just, like, kinda building the muscle memory of, like, okay, like, this is how, like, an onboarding should flow. This is how, a dashboard should flow. Like, I was looking at, one of our students' apps today, and, like, I was looking at the dashboard, and I was like, "Dude, like, you have settings, you have, like, notification," like, it's like it was just way too much, and it's like, Lovable didn't do anything wrong, but it's just like,
It's
you
doing
need to kinda
exactly what you told it.
yeah, it's just a lot, and so a lot of this just comes from playing around and experimenting, and there's a couple of cool tools. There's one called Mobbin. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, I am familiar.
Yeah, like, Mobbin's cool for, like, referencing this and kinda really seeing what good UX looks like. You can kinda go through every single app that you know and love and just kind of see the flows. 21st Dev is another great components library for Lovable, which I've been really impressed with just how accurate it translates. That's something we're really going to try to push more on is building our own kind of components libraries that we can share with
Dude,
people as
that'll be
well.
such a huge growth lever for you guys. Like lovable
Yeah.
templates is such a massive growing category.
Yeah.
It's super interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Is there any other tools? Yeah, it's kind of a perfect segue. I was going to ask you about that next. Like other tools that are kind of critical to what you guys are doing, or things that people should be focused on.
um, I think one that's like in the design category that's a bit underrated as well is Figma Community.
Hmm.
I don't know if I don't know why I don't know, really I don't really see people talking about this, but Figma just has, like, a library of, like, all these designers who just put out work for free that you can just, like, copy and paste, and it has, like, every single like, Airbnb, Uber, like, it's all there. You can all just people just remade it. So I think that's really great, and you can use, like, HTML to code in Figma. Sorry, like, Figma to code or whatever, and you can, like, copy and paste the components of the code into Lovable. So if you
Hmm.
ever wanna be, like, super specific, you can do that. Again, like, I find that image and then kind of being more detailed after is the best strategy.
No, that makes a lot of sense. This is great. What should I be asking you that I'm not? That like is kind of anything that's happening in this space that we haven't talked about today.
Let me think. Hmm.
Maybe something for you to like. We haven't really gone into like you run an agency, right?
Yeah,
This is like a part of your process is deal flow. Like that's a huge component of this.
yeah,
Um, Everybody is doing their own version of this right now, where it's like build content that drives volume into it. I know you have crazy LinkedIn game. Is there, maybe we could talk about that, or some of the other like lead gen strategies that you're using or seeing be successful for agencies that, especially these AI powered agencies.
Yeah, yeah, I think the biggest thing right now that, I would say the most important thing when you think about these tools to kind of summarize is, you know, they're gonna make the barrier to entry a lot, easier, but it also means that there's gonna be way more competition, and the bar for what is a good product and what, people come to expect is only gonna get higher, as people continue to push the bar. And so I think the question is really now about what you work on, I think is like such an important part of the equation, and also
Totally
thinking
agree.
about the distribution side. So it's like while everybody's talking about Lovable and AI and all these like AI tools, like it's great, but like, okay, what are you building first off? And then second off, like how do you actually get users on that? It, these are two really big and important questions. Um, and so I think it's important to think through it more holistically. Um, I also think that, if you're looking to, make money with these tools, my bet would be to kind of, I mean, just follow what I'm doing essentially, which is focus on one tool. I see a lot of people try to like be the masters of like everything AI, from like automation to, like content to lovable kind of stuff. Like, I think this is going to become incredibly verticalized. I think you're gonna have like your lovable experts, which may be like more startup focused. You're gonna have like your cursor experts, which are gonna be more maybe like developer enterprise focused. You're gonna have, NAN experts. Obviously, we've already seen that. And so I think you're better off being like the guy in one lane rather than being the kind of everything guy.
No, I totally agree. It's really interesting. It's like, productized services are what are performing the best right now. And it feels like, in relationship to that focusing down, like you're talking about, to one of these single tools and riding that wave and just being like, I'm, the thought leader within that category, to say it in a disgusting way that sounds
Yeah,
terrible, but like in reality, that's what that actually
yeah,
is kind of the way to go about this. The to come back to this, I know the audience is all growth people. Like they're trying to figure out how do they find alpha. Um, you're killing it on LinkedIn. I know YouTube is something you guys are scaling up. Any tactical things you're seeing work in both of those, or any other channels that you're seeing be effective for you guys right now from a lead gen perspective?
yeah. I mean, we've been experimenting a lot. I will say that I think, being an early mover in this space has helped a lot. Just from like obviously it's doing really well, and so you're kind of riding the wave. I would say there's a few like tactical things of like I do think like I have two fundamental kind of principles to posting content, or just marketing as a whole. The first is that people are selfish and don't actually care about you or your business. And so I know that sounds blunt, but the reality is that people are reading content to better themselves or get ahead in their own way. And a lot of people I see create content that is like about themselves. And it's like nobody cares. And that's why it flops. Or they'll like post a screenshot or an image of the product they're building. It's like, again, nobody cares. That's the first thing. The other one is that people are bored and want to be emotionally stimulated. I think that's why you're seeing like people like, you know, Roy Lee is like the epitome of this, right? Which is just like every single thing he does is designed to make you emotionally react, even if you don't want to. Unfortunately, negative emotions are easier to get out of people, and so that's kind of what he does. But if you can kind of combine both of those, right? Which is I think is what I've really been doing, which is like every post I try to add value. I try to give something to people, whether it's playbook or components or whatever. I also try to add in a little bit of controversy, and I think the space as a whole is like so controversial right now that it's like really easy to do. I think that like me being younger and like building an agency in the space is controversial in itself. I got into like a really big beef at the beginning of this year with like the Brett Design Joy guy, and like
Amazing.
I love that, it's just true that like these kind of things like people are bored in their everyday lives, and if they can get an excuse to kind of check out for
Yeah,
a
it's
bit.
entertainment, right? Like, and like it needs to be
Yeah,
approached and thought of like from that angle. 100% agree. So
Yeah, and be visual. I think images and like stuff like that are really important. It just takes up more on the feed. Post consistently. I try to post 5 times a week, like Monday to Friday. Um, and yeah, it just kind of starts compounding. There's really no secret.
Awesome, man. No, it's been super valuable. Where can people find you if they want to reach out? We'll include all the links in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Jacob S. Klug, LinkedIn, I believe Jacob Klug. YouTube is something that I'm experimenting with, and I know Cody's giving me some notes on it, but it's something I'm working on. So it's hard. Like organic is a different breed than just like typing into Twitter and LinkedIn. So,
Totally.
but you can find me on there. I do a lot more deep dives on like building with Lovable, talking about even building an agency. I did a vlog where I went to Sweden, hanged with the
Dude, you
Lovable
can
team.
crush it right
Yeah,
now with just lovable builds, like how to build,
yeah,
how to build lovable applications that don't look like AI made them. Like that will go viral tomorrow, right? Like it's like all the
yeah,
pain points that you guys have solved. Like just talking about that and turning that into content will be I rid- a ridiculous amount of lead like inbound too. It will come from that. Like if you show them how to do, like we see this all the time. Like show them how to do something and be like, cool. Like if you don't want to do this yourself, because it just it's going to take hours of your time to actually figure this out. Just like hire us basically to do this, right? And it's a
yeah.
perfect way to do it. YouTube is some of the best traffic I've ever seen. I feel like it's so underrated right now, honestly. YouTube organic. So
Yeah, LinkedIn too. I think LinkedIn is super. People,
totally,
everyone's spending on X, but LinkedIn is they're really pushing content out, and so I would say it's my biggest platform. I know we spoke about this last time about you
totally,
doubling
totally.
down.
No, that's great. Awesome, man. We'll include that. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, we'll have you back later on just to kind of give a state of the union of what's going
Yeah,
on, 6 months from now in the vibe coding arena. Because I know it's a lot of a lot of new companies coming into this space too, which is kind of fascinating to see that happen. So
yeah, super cool. Appreciate it. Thanks,
awesome.
Cody.
Yeah, thanks, brother.